Part 1. The quiet signs your Shih Tzu may be losing trust. Let me start with something that surprises many owners. A Shih Tzu almost never stops loving you, but a Shih Tzu can slowly stop trusting you. And the strange part is, most people never notice the moment it begins. Picture this. You call your Shih Tzu from across the room. Come here. For a second, the little dog freezes. The ears tilt slightly. The eyes look at you, then away. Maybe the dog walks toward you slowly. Maybe it pretends to sniff the floor. Maybe it simply doesn't move. Most owners laugh and say, "My dog is stubborn." But when you spend many years studying dog behavior, you learn something important. That pause is not stubbornness. That pause is hesitation. And hesitation is often the first tiny crack in trust. Shih Tzus are not working dogs. They were not bred to herd, sheep, or guard farms. For hundreds of years, they lived inside palaces in China as companion animals. Their entire evolutionary job was simple: live close to humans and read human emotions extremely well. Because of that history, Shih Tzus watch their owners constantly. They observe tone of voice, facial expressions, body posture, and patterns of behavior in a way that feels almost uncanny. They build a mental map of what kind of person you are. Are you predictable? Are you safe? Are you fair? A dog's brain is always asking those questions, and when the answers feel uncertain, the changes in behavior begin quietly. The first thing many owners notice is that their Shih Tzu responds to commands more slowly. The dog used to run toward you immediately when called. Now there is a delay. The dog looks at you before deciding whether to move. From a scientific perspective, this is tied to something called predictive learning. Animals constantly predict what will happen after a signal. When a signal leads to good outcomes most of the time, the response becomes fast and confident. When the outcome becomes unpredictable, hesitation appears. So that little pause before your Shih Tzu walks toward you is actually the brain running a quick calculation. Is this going to be good or not? Another sign is subtle eye contact changes. A Shih Tzu that deeply trusts its owner looks at them often. Not in a tense way, but in a relaxed, curious way. Eye contact between dogs and humans is actually connected to oxytocin release, the same bonding hormone that strengthens the relationship between a mother and her child. But when trust weakens, the dog's gaze changes. The dog may glance at you less often, or look away more quickly. Sometimes the dog will look toward you and then turn its head slightly to the side. That head turn is not random. In canine communication, it is often a small signal of discomfort. Then there are the behaviors many people completely misunderstand. Your Shih Tzu yawns even though it isn't tired. It licks its lips when nothing is there. It blinks slowly and looks away. These are known in behavioral science as calming signals. Dogs use them to reduce social tension. In simple terms, the dog is saying, "I am feeling a little pressure right now." When owners miss these signals, they often think the dog is simply being quiet or relaxed. But in reality, the dog's nervous system is trying to stabilize itself. Shih Tzus are especially interesting here because they tend to be polite communicators. Many of them will show dozens of small calming signals before ever showing anything like growling or snapping. They try very hard to keep social peace, which means if you learn to notice these signals early, you can understand your dog at a completely different level. Another quiet change happens in physical closeness. A Shih Tzu that feels deeply safe often chooses to stay near its owner, maybe not constantly touching, but within a comfortable distance. On the couch, beside the bed, near your feet while you work. But when trust becomes uncertain, distance increases just a little. the dog may choose the other side of the couch, or sleep a few steps farther away, or wander into another room more often. None of these behaviors look dramatic. Nothing appears wrong on the surface, but the emotional distance is slowly growing. And here is the important thing. This shift almost never happens because of one big mistake. Dogs are incredibly forgiving. One bad day, one stressful moment, one loud voice that alone rarely breaks trust. What changes things are patterns. Small patterns repeated over days and weeks. Calling the dog and then doing something unpleasant. Scolding when the dog does not understand why. Changing rules from one day to the next. The dog's brain begins to notice those patterns. Not consciously, the way humans analyze things, but through thousands of tiny emotional impressions stored inside the nervous system. Over time, the dog simply becomes more cautious. Not less loving, not less loyal, just a little more careful. And the beautiful part of this story is that the same process works in reverse. Trust is not something mysterious or fragile. It is built through repeated experiences that tell the dog one simple message. This human is safe. This human is fair. This human makes sense. When a Shih Tzu feels that message consistently, something remarkable happens. The dog becomes relaxed in a very deep way. It looks at you more. It responds faster. It stays close, not because it has to, but because it genuinely wants to. In the next part of this video, we're going to look at the specific everyday habits that quietly damage that trust without most owners realizing it. And once you see them, you may suddenly recognize a few things that happen in your own home every single day. Part 2. The 7 everyday habits that quietly damage a Shih Tzu's trust. Now that we understand the subtle signs, the next step is uncomfortable but important. Most trust problems with Shih Tzus are not caused by cruelty or neglect. They are caused by small habits owners repeat every day without realizing the impact. When these habits appear occasionally, they do not matter much. But when they become patterns, a Shih Tzu's brain slowly learns that human behavior is unpredictable. The first habit is calling your Shih Tzu and then doing something unpleasant. Many owners do this without thinking. The dog is playing happily in the living room or exploring the yard. The owner calls. "Come here." The dog runs over with excitement. Tail wagging. Then suddenly, the dog is taken to the bath, the grooming table, the nail clipper, or is picked up and placed in a crate. From a learning perspective, the dog's brain connects the signal with the result. In behavioral science, this is basic associative learning. If "come here" repeatedly leads to something uncomfortable, the dog does not see the command as positive anymore. The next time you call, the Shih Tzu pauses. It is not ignoring you. Its brain is evaluating whether coming toward you will lead to a good experience or not. The second habit is punishing a dog for something that happened earlier. This is one of the most common misunderstandings in dog ownership. An owner comes home and finds a chewed shoe or a mess on the floor. The dog is scolded. The dog lowers its head, avoids eye contact, maybe rolls slightly onto its side. Many people interpret this as guilt, but scientifically, dogs do not connect punishment with actions that happened hours earlier. What the dog actually learns is something very different. It learns that sometimes the human suddenly becomes angry for reasons it cannot understand. That unpredictability creates anxiety, and anxiety weakens trust. The third habit is inconsistent rules. One day, the Shih Tzu is allowed on the couch. The next day, it is pushed off. One day, jumping on guests is cute. The next day, it is punished. For humans, these changes feel minor. For dogs, they create confusion. Dogs rely heavily on predictable patterns in their environment. When rules constantly change, The dog cannot form stable expectations. And when expectations disappear, the nervous system becomes cautious. The fourth habit is invading the dog's space in ways that humans find affectionate, but dogs may find uncomfortable. Shih Tzus are tolerant and often gentle, but many still dislike certain human gestures. Tight hugging, then grabbing the face, leaning directly over the dog, or disturbing the dog while it is sleeping can create mild stress signals. These moments may seem harmless, but repeated often, they teach the dog that personal boundaries are not respected. The fifth habit is controlling every movement during walks. Many owners hold the leash tight and pull the dog along a fixed path. But for dogs, walking is not just exercise. It is exploration. Smelling the ground is how dogs read information about their environment. When a dog is constantly rushed or pulled away from smells, it loses the ability to interact naturally with the world. Over time, the walk becomes less cooperative and more restrictive. The sixth habit is ignoring stress signals. Dogs communicate discomfort in very subtle ways long before they growl or snap. Lip licking, yawning, turning the head away, blinking slowly, or freezing briefly are all calming signals. These signals are the dog's way of saying, "This situation is a little too much for me." When owners miss these signals and continue the interaction, the dog learns that its attempts to communicate are ineffective. The seventh habit is the quiet absence of real interaction. Feeding a Shih Tzu and taking it outside is basic care, but it does not automatically build a relationship. Shih Tzus were bred to live close to humans. They thrive on shared activity, eye contact, gentle play, and short training moments that create communication. Without these experiences, the relationship becomes passive. The dog lives near the owner, but emotional connection weakens. When you step back and look at these 7 habits, something interesting appears. None of them are dramatic mistakes. They are small patterns that slowly shape how the dog's brain interprets human behavior. And for a Shih Tzu, which is a breed deeply wired for companionship, those patterns matter more than many owners realize. In the next part, we will step deeper into the science of why these patterns affect dogs so strongly, and how the brain of a Shih Tzu actually builds trust with the humans it lives beside every day. Part 3. The science behind trust. In a Shih Tzu's brain. To really understand why these small habits matter, we have to look at what is happening inside the brain of a dog, because trust between a Shih Tzu and its owner is not just emotional in a poetic sense. It is a biological process. It involves learning systems, hormones, and neural patterns that evolved over thousands of years of living alongside humans. Let's begin with the most fundamental mechanism, learning through association. Every dog constantly builds connections between signals and outcomes. When a certain sound, word, or gesture repeatedly leads to a positive experience, the brain strengthens that pathway. The response becomes faster and more confident. In behavioral science, this is the foundation of operant conditioning. For example, if a Shih Tzu hears the word come, and most of the time it leads to praise, food, or affection, the brain records that pattern. The next time the dog hears the word, it moves immediately because the predicted outcome is good. But if that same signal sometimes leads to grooming stress, nail clipping, or being taken away from play, the prediction becomes uncertain. The brain pauses. That hesitation you sometimes see when a Shih Tzu looks at you before responding is not disobedience. It is the nervous system calculating probabilities based on past experiences. The second biological system involved in trust is hormonal bonding. Research published in the journal Science in 2015 showed that when dogs and humans look into each other's eyes, Both species experience an increase in the hormone oxytocin. Oxytocin is the same hormone involved in bonding between mothers and infants. In other words, simple interactions like eye contact, gentle talking, and shared attention activate a real chemical feedback loop between dog and owner. The dog looks at the human. Oxytocin rises. The human responds warmly. Oxytocin rises again in the dog. Over time, this creates a stable emotional attachment. This process is especially powerful in companion breeds like Shih Tzus. These dogs were selectively bred for centuries to live in close proximity to humans, which means their brains are highly tuned to human faces, voices, and emotional cues. Then, there is the role of predictability in the nervous system. All animals, including dogs and humans, have a stress regulation system that depends on environmental stability. When the environment is predictable, the brain feels safe. Stress hormones remain low, and behavior is relaxed and cooperative. But when signals become inconsistent, the brain becomes cautious. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, can rise slightly. The dog becomes more alert, more watchful, and less spontaneous. For a Shih Tzu, this shift can appear as subtle behavioral changes. The dog may watch the owner more carefully before responding. It may hesitate when called. It may show calming signals more frequently during interactions. None of these behaviors mean the dog no longer cares about its owner. They simply mean the dog is trying to interpret the situation more carefully. Another fascinating piece of science comes from attachment research. In studies conducted in Hungary using a test originally designed for human infants, researchers placed dogs in a room with their owners and then briefly separated them. The results showed that dogs often treat their owners as a secure base, very similar to how children use their parents. When the owner leaves, the dog shows mild stress. When the owner returns, the dog relaxes. This attachment system explains why trust matters so much. A Shih Tzu does not just see you as someone who provides food. In many cases, you are the central reference point for safety in its world. So when everyday interactions are consistent and fair and positive, the dog's brain builds a strong expectation that being near you is safe. That expectation produces calm behavior, fast responses, and relaxed body language. When interactions become unpredictable, the expectation changes. The dog begins monitoring the situation more closely, trying to understand what will happen next. And this leads us to an important insight. Trust is not a personality trait in dogs. It is not something a dog either has or does not have. Trust is a pattern the brain builds through repeated experiences, which means the same way small habits can slowly weaken trust. Small changes in how we interact with our dogs can rebuild it surprisingly quickly. In the final part of this video, we're going to look at practical ways to restore and strengthen that trust with your Shih Tzu so the relationship becomes calm, cooperative, and deeply connected again. Part 4. How to rebuild and strengthen trust with your Shih Tzu. The good news is that trust with a Shih Tzu is surprisingly resilient. Dogs are wired to repair social bonds. Their brains are constantly updating expectations based on new experiences. That means even if some habits have weakened trust over time, small changes in daily interactions can begin to rebuild it faster than many owners expect. The first step is making your signals predictable again. If you call your Shih Tzu, let that moment become something positive most of the time. Call the dog over. Kneel down. Smile. Offer a treat. Scratch the chest. Then simply let the dog walk away again. When this pattern repeats, the dog's brain rewrites the association. The word come stops predicting stress and starts predicting something pleasant. Over time, you will notice the hesitation disappear. The second step is creating consistent rules. Dogs feel safest when the world makes sense. If your Shih Tzu is allowed on the couch, let that rule remain stable. If it is not allowed, keep the rule the same every day. Consistency removes the confusion that makes dogs cautious. When expectations are clear, the dog relaxes because it understands how to behave successfully. The third step is respecting the dog's communication. When a Shih Tzu turns its head away, licks its lips, or steps back slightly, it is not being difficult. It is simply communicating that the situation is a bit overwhelming. If you pause in that moment, soften your body language and give the dog a little space. You send an important message. The dog learns that its signals are understood. That single realization can dramatically strengthen trust. The fourth step is allowing your dog small choices during daily life. During walks, let your Shih Tzu stop and smell the ground for a few seconds. Let it explore a corner of the park before continuing forward. To a dog, sniffing is like reading a newspaper filled with information about the world. Giving the dog time to do this creates cooperation instead of constant control. The fifth step is building shared experiences. Trust grows strongest when dogs and humans do things together. Short training sessions, gentle play, calm conversation, and relaxed eye contact all reinforce the bond. When your Shih Tzu looks at you and you respond with warmth instead of pressure, the oxytocin bonding system activates again. The dog begins to see you as a stable source of safety and comfort. What many owners discover is that once these changes begin, the dog's behavior shifts in noticeable ways. The dog starts coming faster when called. It looks at you more often. It chooses to stay close to you even when it has the option to wander away. Those are not signs of obedience alone. They are signs of emotional security. A Shih Tzu's trust is not built through dominance or strict control. It grows through something much quieter and more powerful. Thousands of small, predictable, positive interactions. Every time your dog approaches you and the experience feels safe, the bond strengthens. Every time your dog communicates and you respond calmly, the relationship becomes clearer. Over days, weeks, and months, the dog's brain forms a simple expectation about the world. This human understands me. And when a Shih Tzu truly believes that, something beautiful happens. The dog does not just live in your home. It chooses you as the safest place in its world. That is what real trust looks like between a dog and a human.